I'm going to chair the afternoon session. The first three talks that were invited by the organizers of the Logic and Algorithm in Databases and AI program. And we have three talks here. The first talk is a keynote talk given by Alon Halevi. Alon has a numerous number of awards, and he's extremely well known in the database community. But this is not why we invited him here. Let me tell you why we invited Alon. We invited Alon because 25 years ago, he was a mainstream database theoretician, publishing papers in the top database theory conferences. But he was not working on traditional topics. He was working on innovative topics that back then were innovative and visionary: data integration, localist view, globalist view, query answering using views. These were terms coined by Alon. 25 years ago, I think we have dozens, if not hundreds, of papers studying these topics in all possible aspects. Since then, Alon moved on. He moved to Google, where he developed some very well-known systems, data fusion, and especially web tables. Same thing here. People today are continuing data exploration, and web tables is a reference system that you need to know about it. So the question on our mind is, what is next? What will we be studying in database theory, 25 years from now? So this is why we have Alon here to get some inspiration. So please take it away.
Thank you, Dan. It's really nice to be in a place where there are people who knew me since I was 25. I'm looking at you, Edith, but there are a bunch of others who knew me in my 20s. So I'm not sure I'm going to give an answer to that question, but thank you for the really kind introduction. I'm going to be talking, hopefully I'm sure we're going to be talking about this topic in 25 years from now. Okay, I'm not sure how it relates a little bit to database theory as well. So I'm going to be talking about well-being, AI, and you. That's actually the title of a book that I'm writing almost even as we speak. And it's about how we can build AI technology that really improves our well-being. So this is about a journey that is 1% done. And so we're thinking about how the future of this is going to look like. Okay. So if we have a ton of technologies that have been developed for our well-being, right? I mean, going back in history to the wheel and to the light bulb and to the transportation systems, obviously they improved our well-being, but we're focused more today on things like digital technology, like like the internet and the phones in your pockets. And for the purpose of this talk, I'm also wearing the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, so I can now take a picture of you. And there, now I can take them off. So we're the amount of technology, the amount of things that are measuring what we're doing and knowing what we're doing is just like expanding quite a bit. Okay, so we're collecting a lot of data about ourselves. Now, given the new capabilities of generative AI, we're also starting to seek conversational capabilities that are mind-blowing. Okay, so when I was doing AI in grad school, a number of years that we're not going to name, if you told me that within my lifetime we will have systems like GPT-4, I would have laughed you out of the room. Okay, so now we have systems that converse with you. They can actually bullshit confidently, but every now and then, actually more often than not, they will tell you things that actually are true and useful. So there are a lot of people in the AI. I call it a cacophony of voices, right? Everywhere you go, you hear all kinds of things about AI. There are a lot of people who are talking about the fact that in a few years, we're going to have highly personal assistants that are going to know everything about us, are going to give us advice about everything we do throughout our day, whether it's what to eat, when to exercise, what relationships to nurture, and everything like that. Okay. The problem is right now we're not there. We have a lot of devices. We have, this thing here is an Oura ring. It knows how well I slept at night, but it doesn't. It tells me something very nice in the morning, whether I slept well or not. It'll be nice to me, but it doesn't know my context. It doesn't know that maybe I came back from Europe and I'm jet lagged and I didn't sleep well, or maybe I have some stress at work. So its advice is completely out of context of my life. It doesn't know me. It just knows my sleep. Okay. So the question is, can we do better? So over the last few years, I've been really interested in well-being. This is what happens to retired database theoreticians, right? So I commissioned at some point when I was, last time they let me manage people, at Megagon, I paid somebody to create this beautiful poster about happiness, Okay, this was Megagon Labs, which is still there. We were an AI lab that was trying to build technology for well-being. And so what you're seeing here is, well-being starts with your your psychological, your financial safety, things like that, just so you can get through the day. Then it starts talking about your body, right? You need to sleep well, eat well, exercise, all these things. But all these things just prepare you for your mental well-being. Okay, so you can actually be in the moment when you're trying to do something, and you can actually start imagining and start thinking, and you're free to actually develop. And then you get higher in the tree, and this is things more like the meaning in life. You're learning, you're creating relationships, you're volunteering, you're doing stuff like that. So this looks like a little bit like a beautiful version of the Maslow hierarchy needs, even though Maslow never thought about it as a hierarchy. Okay, so even though this is a tree, don't think of it as something that you need to go up. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Okay, so the question, so what you're seeing from this picture is that well-being is like 5,000 different things, right? And for each one of us, it's an individual combination of all of these things. So what you're seeing in the industry today is that you have an app, multiple apps for each one of these, right? You have one for meditation and one for dieting and one for exercise, one for sleep and one for this and one for that, and they don't talk to each other. So the question is, are we doomed, given that well-being is such a complicated thing, are we doomed to having 10,000 applications that don't talk to each other, or can we do better than that? That's the question that I've been obsessed with for the last few years. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to argue that that we can't continue going this way. Okay, so my point is that well-being apps today are a little bit like what programming used to be before, when we were writing programs against the hardware. Okay, so you're the hardware, I'm the hardware. Okay, and each one of these apps is working directly towards the hardware. And we all know, I'm too young to have programmed against the hardware, but we all know that doesn't work. Okay, and so what we did in computer science was we came up with this beautiful thing called operating systems. That is a bunch of components that makes it easier for programmers to write programs and for computers to manage multiple programs at once, right? And it's delightful sometimes for users. Okay, so I'm going to argue that we need something like an operating system for well-being in order for us to be able to build the new generation of well-being apps in a way that actually the benefits add up rather than they're disjoint from each other. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about where I got to from how I got here. So I'm going to talk about human values, some of the work we did at Meta, and then halfway through the talk, I'm going to turn back into a database guy. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one of the components of this operating system, which is the database of you. Okay, your personal timeline, and then I'll pontificate a little bit about how LLMs and database management are going to some of the questions that I actually am very excited about in that realm. And I don't have to get through all the slides, so anytime you have questions, please just stop me. If we end up getting into slide 4, that's fine with me. Okay. Any questions so far? No. Okay. So first of all the opinion. If you hear an opinion, it's mine. It's not my company's. My goal is to get through this talk without getting fired. Yes.
So your assumption is that we do need that app.
Yes. I would love to have one app that is sort of an extension of me that just takes care of everything for me, to a degree where I'm going to negotiate with it what I delegate to it and what not. But yeah, personally I want something that knows everything about me so it can actually give me help. But that's not everybody agrees with that. Okay, but what I'm arguing is that even if you don't want that, we still need that operating system so these applications can at least coordinate at a minimal level.
Well, I'm questioning whether maybe that's harmful to you to have an app to do stuff that you do.
We'll get into that. Okay, so I should say everything we do in especially in AI and generative AI, right? Everything we do has a good part and a harmful part. So we need to think about these things from the very beginning. And I work for Meta, remember? We know about harms. So I'll get to this in a minute. Okay. Okay. So any opinions that you hear have nothing to do with my employer, and I'm going to ask many more questions that I'm going to be able to answer, which hopefully you guys can help. Okay. So I sort of said all this already. Okay, so we need a new abstraction. We need an operating system for well-being. Now, when we talk about computers, coming up with the operating system is easy. I hope there are no OS people in the room here that'll kill me. But you know, we built these systems, so we know what the components are. With humans, right? What the heck are these components? How can we do this in a way that actually has a bunch of components that are useful for application builders and for your well-being? We have called, so this is a book that we're writing. My co-author, whose name I can't say yet because her company has not agreed yet for us to publish the book, but you know, it's a name in there. She's actually a PhD in psychology. Okay, so anything I say about well-being comes from her. We called it OS, operating system well. So Oswell, that's the operating system. Now, it does sound a little bit like Orwell, and I know some of you are already thinking about Big Brother. This is a pure coincidence, but I think it's a happy coincidence because we're going to emphasize that it's not Orwell. This is an S, not an R. Okay. Okay. So here are the components. So I can finish my talk right here. So these are the three components of the operating system that we see that we are proposing. Okay, and we know that this is just an initial proposal, so we're not. But let's start. So it's experiences, attention, and connection. Let's talk about each one of these. So the experiences is the database of you. Okay, fundamentally, the more the AI knows about you, the better advice it can give you. Okay, so what do I mean by know about you? I mean knowing about your past experiences, your subjective experiences about what you had, your aspirations for the future, your partially formed plans for the future. We're going to talk much more about this in a moment. Your habits, your preferences, anything that factors into how you make decisions on a daily basis. Okay, and the point here is that given all the data that we're already creating, we're leaving all these breadcrumbs all over all over the clouds, right? We can actually create this thing and already create useful observations from it. The second component is attention. Okay, your life is your attention. Okay, so I love this story from Dan Levitin, the author of An Organized Mind, where he met Jimmy Carter when Jimmy Carter was running for president. We're talking 1975, okay? And he had a conversation with Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter was really impressed by the fact that Jimmy Carter was completely focused on him, okay? He was completely present, not worried about anything going on. He was focused on Dan Levitin, and he was like, how does Jimmy Carter do this? Well, Jimmy Carter doesn't do this. He's got 100 other people that are making sure that at any point in his day, he's attending to the most important thing. And when Dan Levitin's time is up, somebody will come and take Jimmy Carter to the next most important thing to do. Okay, so why can't we all be Jimmy Carter? Why can't we all have an assistant that at any given point in the day at least tries to help us focus on the most important thing that we need to do right now? And it doesn't need to be productivity. It could also be just like playing a video game if we need a rest, or going for a walk, or spending some time with our kids and seeing how they're feeling. Okay, so attention is your life. Okay, and so when you go further into the detail here, there are two things in attention. One is a bunch of recommendation systems that know a lot about you, so they could recommend what to read, what to eat, what to do with your free time, stuff like that. And planners, right? We all spend a lot of time ruminating about all kinds of details about our life, right? That could be handled by a computer. Okay, so we have recommendation systems and planners in our attention component. The connection component is kind of exciting, right? I mean, we all know that our life is our relationships, right? Those are the most important things we do. They're the most challenging, but the most rewarding things we do in life is develop and nurture relationships. So the role of the connection component is to help us manage that. Try to understand what value do we get from each relationship? What value do we bring to each relationship? What are our goals with these relationships? Which ones need more attention right now? Which ones can we put on the back burner for a bit? Just help us find, be and do for the people in our lives as best as we can. And it's not just relationships with people, it's relationships with communities, right? So a lot of us, our sense of identity is the communities that we belong to. And the health of those relationships is a huge component of our well-being. Okay, I want to say, so when I joined Meta, I joined this team that developed machine learning models for protecting online, removing bad content from the platform. Okay, so hate speech, misinformation, bullying, all that stuff. Okay, so there's a list of 50 violations that Facebook tracks, or at least at the time it tracked. There are 50 bad things that people do. Okay, 50 categories of bad things that people do, and we have teams and machine learning models that try to identify these things using AI, because you have a huge amount of content being uploaded, and it's in different, in 100 and something languages, in different cultural realms, and all that stuff. Okay, so our team, so there's a huge team, and then there's an AI team that worked with them to develop the AI models. Okay, now, so we were trying to enforce the community policies of Facebook, and every online platform or social platform has their policies, right? But fundamentally, we realized that we were making ethical decisions, right? So when you say, look, you can't say this thing on Facebook, you're saying you're limiting free speech, but you're trading that off against the safety of, or the well-being of your audience, okay? Or when we're saying that we're not going to try to determine your ethnicity from your posts or anything that you do, unless you tell us exactly what your ethnicity is, we're not allowed to actually try to figure out your ethnicity, okay? But that trades off our usefulness, right? Maybe we can find something that is really, really useful for your specific ethnicity, like a drug that just came on the market and might, address a certain population of people, but we can't give that to you because we decided not to figure that, not to figure out your ethnicity. So there was a lot of interest in okay, what are the human values that a recommendation system, that any social network should even be thinking about? Okay, and these values are not just about recommendation systems; they're about AI systems in general. We're seeing the same thing today with generative AI. So the answer to the question is here. So what actually Jonathan Stray from Berkeley and I built this coalition of 21 people who from academia, from industry, from policy and journalism and law and even a bunch of AI people. And we wrote this pretty long paper that was finally accepted to ACM Tours, where we at least gave the foundation, the list of values that based on a lot of our research, that are relevant to recommendation systems, and we describe the state of the art and the technical challenges that are that have to do with each one of these values. Now, so if you're looking for a great research topic or a PhD thesis for your students, just read this paper in section 5. You'll find a bunch. Okay, the point is that one of the reasons that I'm trying to bring up here is that as Facebook, right, I can align with human values all I want. Suppose I did the perfect job, right, of aligning with Facebook, but hopefully you don't spend more than 5% of your day on Facebook, okay, even less than that. I mean, I would thank you as a stockholder, but you probably don't, okay? And so what's the point, right, of trying to, completely align with human values if my effect on your day, right, is minimal? So in order to really affect your well-being, we need to have a much more holistic view of everything that you do or everything that you engage with, either online or hopefully in the real world, in order to meaningfully address or improve your well-being. So that's how I got to this. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, so we're going to talk about experiences. Okay, so now I'm turning into a database guy. Okay, so I'm going to slow down a little bit. Okay, so let's imagine a new ecosystem, or actually an existing ecosystem of personal digital data. So today, you are leaving breadcrumbs everywhere, right? Every time I go for a run, this thing knows it. This thing knows how I sleep. Amazon knows what I buy. Spotify knows that I listen to Lex Friedman too much. Everything I do is, most things that I do are known somewhere in the digital realm, okay? So I can create, and I have, I'll show you in a second, I can actually create what we call a personal timeline that has all my digitally recorded experiences, okay? And we did this, okay? It's big. Okay, and over this now, as a database guy, right? The first thing I want to do is query this thing, right? Where did I go running when I was in Tel Aviv, or what was that name of the restaurant I went to on my second night in Tokyo, stuff like that. Okay, so this thing is like the transactional database of my life. Okay, everything I did is going to be in there. That's great, but there are things that you can do that we know from database world, which is you can go and start creating views, right? So out of this thing, you can start creating summaries of yourself. Okay, so you can actually create your food summary, your preferences, which are evident from a lot of what you did, your reading preferences, your travel preferences, your exercise routines. You can actually create small summaries of you that are based on what you've actually done in life. Okay, now these things are pretty small. You can actually take them and throw them as context into a ChatGPT and start getting much better answers for your questions, because now this thing is going to know you. Okay, so we have this ability to collect all the data, put it into a timeline, analyze this timeline, and start creating things that you can go and use in the real world. Yeah.
It feels like this is a more detailed, daily diary we can get. I just wonder whether there is actually any app actually can summarize all the data and really show you dashboard or detailed daily diary. Just like a dashboard.
I'll show you in 2 slides. Okay. So just hang on for 2 more minutes. Okay. So thanks to a bunch of Europeans, okay, GDPR enables us to do this, right? So according to GDPR, with all the jokes that we have about GDPR, you can actually go and download all your personal data. It's a little clunky now, okay, but the Europeans are working for us. They're the DMA Act, the Data Markets Act, is saying that all this data should be available through an API as well. So you're not going to have to go and download this thing. So you can actually today download this data, and I actually did this last year. I sat there and I built this thing. But and you don't actually have to import all the data. So if I don't have to import all my photos. All I need to do is get the captions of the photos and the most important things there. So it's not going to be necessarily a huge thing. When we get to things like these guys, the smart glasses, right? You don't even have enough memory to store the video of your entire day. So we're going to have to learn how to forget more than that's going to be our bigger problem soon. Okay, so we did this. And you can go on GitHub and find it. So we call it personal, whatever. It's a timeline builder. We just released this a few months ago. And this is my dashboard. So this is my April 15th of 2019. I was attending the TED conference, so I started by going for a run in the morning. At TED, they have espresso machines everywhere, so I was pulling an espresso shot. And then there was a party and whatever, okay? So this is the summary of my day, and believe me, there were more interesting days than this. I mean, it's actually really interesting to look at the hour by hour things that you did, and there's so some of you might remember Gordon Bell. Okay, 25 years ago at Microsoft Research, he and his team built a system called My Life Bits, which imagine doing this with the technology of 25 years ago. Okay, talk about being ahead of your time. Okay, this guy was ahead of his time. And he then wrote a few years later this book called Total Recall, that the whole book is talking about what you can do if you had a timeline like this. Okay, and the possibilities are quite impressive. In terms of like the database thing, okay, let me know when how I'm doing on time, because
20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay, good. So the join here is very easy. Okay, sorry, we talked about joins before, but you have a time point. Okay, you have a timestamp on everything you import. So the join is easy. You just put it on a timeline and you can see everything. Okay. Now there's a question. I don't get this question from database people because we're too smart. But I get questions from other people like, why do you need to fuse the data? Okay, why can't you just like talk to each data source by itself? The point is that the only way to really get a complete picture of you, right, is to look at everything, right? So when I go to Tokyo, okay, I don't tell my system I'm going to Tokyo for 5 days and this is what I'm doing. I go there, I start taking photos, I start navigating to a bunch of sushi shops and using my credit card, right? Maybe I'm going for a run around, in Tokyo. That's what you have. You have the raw data, right? And so you need to integrate all of that to figure out that actually the guy is in Tokyo and having a pretty good time, right? Moreover, when I come back, I don't land at SFO and I then take a photo of SFO and say, hey, I'm back. No, the only way you know I'm back is because the next morning I went for a run in Los Altos and you figure out I'm back. Okay, so you, in order to really get a full picture of yourself, you really need to fuse data from multiple sources. I mean, I read books from like 4 different sources, right? I read books from my library, from Audible, from Kindle. Sometimes I actually go and buy books, right? So if you want to get a good idea of my reading, profile, you got to integrate all this data. Yes.
None of these examples is illegal.
Huh?
You don't show any illegal activities.
Try not to get fired.
That's the question. What happens to those? They get logged too.
They do get logged. Elaborate on this a little bit.
Whoever can find them can find out a lot of unpleasant things.
So there are 2 issues here. One is if you're doing something illegal, don't record it. Okay, a little bit of common sense. Okay.
Choice.
Huh? Yeah, I think you can always turn off all your devices, right? I mean, if you're going to kill somebody, turn off your cell phone. Okay. It's, but I think that maybe the more troublesome point, right, is you're not doing anything illegal, but maybe the government will look at your data and not like the kinds of things that you're doing, right? So there is an issue. We'll get to privacy in a second here, but there is an issue of privacy here, and I want to be very clear that this is we're not completely throwing garbage. Yes.
There's a conspiracy theory here, right?
Okay.
It's all in preparation of U.S. government introducing social credit system like in China.
In China, they
You ate a cake, so your health insurance will go up, right? Because you're eating healthy.
That is true. So I think let me just say the thing about privacy now. Just one sec. Today, I mean, so it depends what you mean by privacy. Okay, you can actually have all this data on your device, encrypted. Okay, it's not actually the. Let me say 2 things. First of all, a lot of the data that is coming into the timeline is already sitting somewhere in the cloud. Okay, so you're already trusting a bunch of companies and a bunch of systems to store it for you. What happens is when you start fusing data, then then the value of it goes up, right? Nobody wants, the IRS. Fortunately, all data integration projects at the IRS failed, right? Otherwise, we'd all be in trouble here, right? So not all. Some of you pay taxes, okay? I do too. But the point is, right? So it's when you integrate data, then the value that you can extract from that is much more. But you can actually today, I think you can actually store all the integrated data on your device if you want, encrypted. And then the question is that enough privacy for you or not, right? And it sort of depends on your trust in government and stuff like that.
I was just going to comment that when I was a young guy in communist Romania, I had all my devices turned off.
Yeah, mostly because you didn't have any, right?
Could you define well-being, and does it mean individual well-being, societal well-being, national well-being? How do you define this?
Great question. Do you have a few hours? So there are much smarter people than me to answer this question. This is more focused on individual well-being, but you also have to realize that, first of all, in some cultures, even individual well-being, right, has more to do with the well-being of the society that you're in, right? So, for example, to oversimplify, in Eastern cultures, the society is actually at least as important, if not more important, than the individual. So the idea, the point here is you got to design the system and the choices that it gives you in a way that enables you to decide what values are most important to you. Okay, that's my short answer, but it's probably not that. Yeah.
So like in this flow, you are kind of going after different apps to collect this, right?
Yeah.
But all of these are getting recorded from different sensors on your brain already. Are you also thinking about some other more efficient way to pull this out from brain directly?
So the elephant in the room is the brain-computer interfaces, right? I was actually talking to an expert at Meta about brain-computer interface just yesterday, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. Okay.
Don't poke things
Huh?
in brain.
Yeah. So first of all, if you want to maintain the integrity of your skull, then the stuff that you can extract from your brain is limited. But even with EEG devices, right? You can extract certain signals from your brain, like surprise, or what they do is they figure out what signals you're sending down to your motor neurons, so they know that what key you're about to press, right? Or so that's useful because then you can actually do stuff just by thinking about it. But today, at least, I haven't heard of any brain-computer interface people that believe that you can actually understand the concepts or thoughts. Or neuroscientists don't even think there is such a thing as a thought. But yeah. Sorry.
When you said we could integrate everything on our own device, equipment, and so on, what is then the financial incentive to provide this to users? Like, if you cannot sell ads based on this, why would you? What's the incentive of a company to provide this to a user?
Great question, and I realize this is industry day, so I need to provide a business case. But I think if the value is high, people will pay for it. Okay. That's one, and there's a bigger question, which is to get all that information flow, right? Today it's very clunky. So in order to actually be able to bring all that information into one place, the big companies like the Googles and Amazons and all that, they need to do some work. They need to decide that they're going to support the right API, so you can actually create this personal timeline. Now, I think there's a lot in this for the big companies, because once you create this new abstraction, once there is such a thing as a personal database, you're going to have a huge wave of innovation of apps that can be built on this. And whenever there's a huge wave of innovations, then the Googles and the Amazons and the Metas of the world will benefit. Okay.
People pay for it, and currently people pay for social networks for their own data. They don't pay for subscriptions to social networks. So
they don't. But would you pay $5 a month to have a shrink?
A shrink.
Psychiatrist, a psychologist, somebody who you could talk to all the time.
Oh, you mean an AI?
An AI psychologist, yes.
But hosted where, like on one's own device?
Well, the model of the psychologist will be downloaded and it'll talk to you. Okay.
Maybe.
It's a good question. Okay, we're not doing any of this yet, right? And so, but once there are useful tools, there will be ways of paying for it. I have no doubt that the world will find ways of making money out of this thing.
There are actually people who pay for Wobot. There are companies that make paid subscription services.
For what?
For therapists, AI therapists.
Okay. But hosted on individual devices?
I don't know if it's on device. People do pay.
Okay.
But so the vision of you is that everybody's completely in control. That means you download it on your device that's secure, and you can then decide what you give up, and people pay for services downloaded on their own device. That's the vision that kind of circumvents the issue of privacy that we all.
So there are a bunch of choices here. I'm not giving the full. This is not a product roadmap yet. Okay, so there's a lot of work to be done. The privacy thing is, by default, all the data is yours and available only to you. Okay, no questions asked. When you want to use the data for something, okay, so let's take an example. I might go into a Japanese restaurant. Okay, I love Japanese food, but I don't remember the names of what of the food items there. Okay, so I may talk to an agent in the Japanese restaurant and say, share with this agent all my preferences and experiences in Japanese restaurants so far for the next 30 seconds. Okay, so it can give me a recommendation from their menu. No data leakage. No. The agent works with me, and that's it. Okay, so I'm specifying at the moment that I need a service exactly what to share, and I'm specifying this in natural language. Okay, now the restaurant, to answer your question, okay, the restaurant might say, we're a very savvy data mining restaurant. If you will give us your data for the next 30 days, we will give you a $10 off your okonomiyaki. Fine. I just, whatever. For me, that works out. Okay, so now your data is under your control, and you can actually start making money off of it if it's valuable to others.
Could you comment on the sort of the reality versus like theoretical of data sharing? So, for instance, I mean, fintech, like open banking, has been standard in the EU. Didn't land all the lobbyists and all the things. Similarly, the whole push towards data or interoperability translated to, at an FTC level, data transfer across walled gardens rather than truly opening it up and helping individuals get that for free on their own devices. So yeah, I'm just curious as in what is sort of, at least in your, from your vantage point, what's sort of the approximate timeline when something like this will become low friction in terms of data collection?
I don't have a great answer, okay? I mean, I think it's a matter of as a society, deciding to do this, okay? And having enough proofs of concept and value that are demonstrating by doing this early on, okay? Now, your point that you know the data transformation things sort of worked in very limited industries, right? Like banks can talk to each other and stuff like that, and that's fine because the value was there, right? And banks really need this, right? Now we're talking about personal data, right? So it doesn't the schema, right? In order to exchange money between banks, you need a very detailed schema. Here, you're not going to have a schema. Your schema is maybe time, location, that's it, because the variety of things that we do is so vast that even trying to generate a schema is useless. How come I doing time? 5 minutes. 5 minutes, okay. Okay. Any other questions? Yes?
I was just curious, just to get to like the first round of this thing existing, what are the main technology, are there any like hardcore technological challenges that you see, any hard computational problems, or is this just something more funding and interest in it too?
So my next few slides will partially answer that, okay? Okay, so I already alluded to this a little bit. Right now, the timeline captures only objective data about your past, right? Because that's all that you're storing in the cloud, right? But actually getting your subjective experiences of what you thought, for example, you were talking to a friend, how did you feel about that conversation? Is there something that you want to remember about this friend? So next time you see them, you could follow up on it. So these things are what we typically think of as journaling, and very few people journal, some do. But I think here there's actually a potential that with language models, language models can start asking you questions that are specific to the experiences that you've had today. So imagine an agent that sort of knows when you have a few minutes to talk, right? Maybe you're commuting or you're washing dishes or something like that. At that point, it knows what you did during the day and can say, well, what did you think about the conversation that you just had, you know, with this person or that person, or how did you like your lunch or stuff like that. So I think there's an opportunity to capture much more of our subjective experiences. But let's get to, we covered privacy, right? So the first problem that any database person goes to is querying these things, right? So if you have a timeline, how are you going to query this? And the second thing a database theory, database theory person does is it creates a taxonomy of queries, right? So here the taxonomy is atomic queries are ones that can pretty much be answered by one item in this database of episodes. Okay, so for example, what was the name of the plumber that I used last month? There's probably one episode in your personal timeline that will get you the answer. Okay, but things get more interesting when you look at, you know, where did I take my mom when she came to visit, or how many times did I go to Singapore, stuff like that, or tell me that my running speed has not slowed down that much in the last 10 years, right? So first of all, we have a synthetic timeline that we built, and it appears in ACL this year. Weng-Chiu Tan, who's well known here, and a bunch of us have built it, so we can now at least try to make progress on this agenda. I think so. So for the most part, I think you know, retrieval augmented generation can pretty much take care of this. Not perfect, but probably advances in that will work well. Here is where we need database expertise. And so the point that I'm going to try, so there are two approaches to this. Okay, I'll just make this point and then I'll conclude. There is what's called the LLM fanboy, which we have a lot of them. I didn't make up this name. The name was made up by by a boy who's an LLM fan, okay? Not a boy, he's a tenured professor. But the point is that these people think that if you just wait long enough to GPT n+1, you can give it anything and just like you're a database person, just chill, okay? Your work on the source is done and LLMs will take care of everything, okay? I don't think that's quite gonna work. The other approach is the database query processing enthusiast, okay? So here's my point. If you can, so let's look at this query. Where did I take my mom when she was in Seattle? And I can have a bunch of English sentences saying mom came to Seattle on April 16th. We went to the zoo, we did this. The stock market crashed on April 20th, but mom, I took her to the airport on 23rd. The LLM can pretty much figure out what happened here. Okay, it can ignore the stock market. We're not going to blame mom for crashing the stock market, but it'll tell you all the places that we went, and to some extent, it'll reason about time and space. Okay, the point here is to get the relevant set of facts to the LLM so it can actually do its reasoning, and it can work with a few more irrelevant facts, but if you give it the right facts, it'll do the right thing, which is huge, right? Because this means we don't need a schema anymore. This is for database people, this is like maturity plus, right? So we can actually do things over text or images, and this is awesome. However, LLMs and NLP, the NLP ethos doesn't think about set-based reasoning the way we do as database people. Us database people, we get up in the morning and we're doing joins and projections and aggregation and stuff like that. That's what we do, okay? LLMs, the NLP people just don't think about that. Okay, so if you're going to ask me how many times I went to Japan, you have to take my timeline, you have to partition it, you have to go to a bunch of places, get a bunch of answers from each partition, and then start doing unions and counting and stuff like that. And you can quote me on this. I don't think this is going to happen in LLM land anytime soon. They just don't respect set-based reasoning the way we do in the database world. Okay, we sort of made a start of this with neural databases a couple of years ago at Meta, which I'll just point you to the papers. And I think I'm out of, I can talk about data integration, but oops. Yeah, better. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. So maybe one more question. Yes, please, Aaron.
So I think I followed the last parts about getting all the data together and the challenges in the discussion we have, but I'm thinking of the examples you gave in the beginning with the triangle and thinking of attention and making the recommendation. And there my question is the psychology kind of clear enough that it's even clear what to go after and what the, like one thing to describe someone's situation and describe what someone's done, but then to think of the consequences of the recommendation. I'm wondering how clear that even is.
Whoa.
Yeah.
It depends on the kind of recommendation you're making, right? So for example, if you're going to recommend books to me, it's a really good idea that you've seen all the books that I've ever read, okay? Now, even then, I can tell you, I want to go outside of my comfort zone, or I want to stay in my comfort zone. So you have a lever there that you can work with. Now, if you're recommending, I'm trying to find, I'm feeling sad and I want to spend the time with a friend who will just like listen to me and make me food, okay? The computer can be better at going through your previous experiences and saying, here are a bunch of people who can do this. They actually live in the area or whatever, right? And at that point, I think the computer can do a better job, at least in terms of recall, so I can make the final determination with a call. So I think my philosophy is let the computer do what it's good at, which is remember a lot of stuff and compute fast, and then give me the final say in what to do.
Thanks. I think that answered. Thank you.
Okay, that's all the time we have. So let's thank Aaron once again. And our next speaker, second speaker.